My name is Olivia Harper, and I am 31 years old. The day my father forgot to hang up, I was standing in the kitchen of the 1.3 million Neatville home my grandmother had left entirely to me. I had called to ask where he had placed a warranty document. Instead, I heard him laugh and say, "She's a burden." "She always has been." Then my mother answered, "That's why she'll give us the house. She still wants us to approve of her." I did not interrupt. I pressed record, listened as they planned to pressure me into adding their names to the deed, and stayed silent until the call finally disconnected. 3 weeks later, while they were still posting smiling photographs from Europe, I signed the closing papers, transferred the sale proceeds into protected accounts, moved every item that belonged to them into prepaid storage, changed my number, and drove away from Illinois. When their flight landed, they returned with expensive souvenirs and the confidence of people who believed my life was still under their control. My father tried his key once, then twice. It did not fit. The front windows revealed empty rooms. Their furniture was gone. Their names were not on the deed, the sale, or any account connected to me. The only thing waiting inside was a white envelope I had left on the kitchen counter. On the front, I had written 2 words for family. Inside was one sentence. Surprise! A burden did this. To understand why that phone call changed everything, you need to understand what the house represented. My father, Michael, spent most of my childhood working maintenance jobs around Illinois. My mother, Susan, moved between receptionist positions and seasonal retail work. Money was treated like a weapon in our home. Every school supply, winter coat, doctor's appointment was recorded as another sacrifice I was expected to repay someday. When I was accepted into a competitive university program, my father placed the tuition estimate on the kitchen table and asked, "Do you understand what your ambitions cost other people?" Grandma Evelyn was the only person who spoke differently. She had built a small commercial property business after becoming widowed in her 40s, repairing neglected duplexes, reinvesting rent, and eventually owning several properties across DuPage County. Her home in Neatville was proof that a woman could build security without waiting for permission. I spent weekends there learning how to read contracts before signing them and how to distinguish generosity from surrender. "Never confuse being needed with being loved," she once told me. At 16, I did not fully understand her warning. At 31, I could hear it in every room of her house. I graduated with a degree in construction and real estate management, became a senior project manager for a Chicago development firm, and by 28, was managing multi-million-dollar renovations, earning more than anyone in my immediate family had ever earned. My parents called my career office work and joked that I spent my days choosing paint colors. Grandma Evelyn attended every promotion dinner I invited her to. When she died unexpectedly, her will was direct. The Neatville house, valued at approximately $1.1 million at the time, belonged solely to me. My parents received separate cash inheritances of nearly $90,000 each. Before the attorney finished reading, my father asked whether the house could be considered a shared family asset. The answer was no. He asked again using different words. The answer remained no. Within 10 months, most of their inheritance had vanished. They bought a luxury SUV, replaced furniture barely 5 years old, joined an expensive country club, and funded an investment that collapsed. Their landlord increased their rent. My mother called me in tears. They needed somewhere to stay. Grandma's house had 4 bedrooms, and I was living there alone, so I agreed. There was no rent agreement because my father said contracts between family members were insulting. I paid the property taxes, insurance, utilities, repairs, landscaping, and groceries. They contributed occasionally by buying detergent or filling the gas tank. 3 months became a year became 4. During that time, my house slowly became theirs. My mother told neighbors, "We inherited this place." My father introduced himself to contractors as the homeowner. They replaced photographs I had chosen with family portraits centered around themselves. When I objected, they accused me of being territorial. At a neighborhood barbecue, my mother posted photographs online with the caption, "Nothing better than hosting friends in our beautiful Neatville home." I stood in the background holding a tray of drinks like hired help. Then came their dream European trip. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Amsterdam. They had already selected everything before asking how they would pay. My father suggested a home equity loan. When I reminded him he had no ownership interest, his expression changed. Your grandmother left it to you because she trusted you to take care of the family. I refused to borrow against the property, but guilt did what legal pressure could not. I agreed to pay for their flights as an anniversary gift. Within 2 weeks, flights had become upgraded rooms, private tours, airport transfers, and an emergency travel card connected to my account. My mother complained that the first hotel in Paris lacked a balcony. My father asked me to increase the spending limit because meals were more expensive than expected. I paid anyway. I told myself I was being generous. The truth was, I was still trying to purchase approval they had never given freely. The night before they left, my mother stood in my kitchen and suggested I sell several pieces of Grandma Evelyn's antique furniture. You don't need all this old stuff. The money could help us enjoy the trip properly. I declined. She touched my arm and smiled as though comforting an unreasonable child. You have to learn that possessions matter less than family. The next morning, I drove them to O'Hare, unloaded their suitcases, and handed my father the travel card. He kissed my forehead, for the first time in months. For one brief, pathetic moment, I felt chosen. 5 weeks into their trip, a storm passed through Neatville, and rainwater began collecting near one of the upstairs windows. I called him about the roofing warranty. He answered after the 4th ring, sounding irritated. What is it, Olivia? He told me it was in the bottom drawer of the den, in a blue folder. I thanked him and heard him say goodbye. Then came the rustling sound of his phone being placed inside a jacket pocket. The call timer kept moving. Before I touched the screen, I heard my mother ask, "Was that her again?" My father answered, "Who else? Something is always wrong when Olivia is involved." They believed the call had ended. My mother complained that I treated the house like a museum. My father said the problem would disappear once they controlled the property. Then he laughed. Eventually, she's a burden, but she's predictable. Make her feel guilty, and she'll do almost anything. I stopped breathing. They discussed the house, my income, and my emotional weaknesses, with the calm efficiency of people reviewing a financial plan. My father said that when they returned, they should move into the primary bedroom. My mother suggested selling Grandma Evelyn's antiques toward their retirement. They discussed meeting with an attorney to explore occupancy rights if I resisted. She would never throw out her own parents, my mother said. The public shame alone would stop her. Then came the sentence that separated my life into before and after. She has been a burden since the day she was born. Food, clothes, college, every dramatic little ambition. Now she has a valuable house handed to her, and acts like she earned everything alone. By next year, that property will support us. It's the least she owes. My mother did not defend me. Her weakness is that she still wants us to be proud of her. They laughed. It was familiar, relaxed, and intimate. I had heard that same laughter through walls as a child. Now I understood that humiliating me was one of the few things that consistently brought them together. The call lasted another 11 minutes. They discussed pressuring me to buy a second property so they could use the Neatville house exclusively. My mother suggested telling relatives that I was neglecting them. My father said he might claim worsening back problems. They planned to present the deed transfer as an estate planning necessity rather than an ownership change. When the international connection finally ended, I remained in the kitchen, staring at my reflection in the black phone screen. I wanted my father to panic and my mother to begin one of her polished apologies, but confronting them would give them time to change tactics. Silence was the only advantage I had. I opened the blue folder. The roofing warranty was inside, but beneath it, I discovered printed emails between my father and a local attorney. He had asked whether long-term residents could gain an ownership interest through contributions or verbal promises. He falsely claimed he had paid for major repairs, and that Grandma Evelyn had verbally intended the house for him. The attorney's response was cautious. Without written evidence, payments, or his name on the title, his claim appeared weak. My father had written one sentence across the bottom: build evidence after Europe. Heartbreak became strategy. They were not merely complaining about me, they were creating a plan. That evening, my mother sent a photograph of herself and my father, smiling beneath the Eiffel Tower. "We're having the most wonderful time. Thank you for taking care of your family. We knew we raised you right." I looked at the photograph for a long time. Then I typed, "You're welcome. Enjoy every minute." She responded with 3 heart emojis. I did not tell her that I had already scheduled a meeting with a property attorney for 8 o'clock the next morning. For the next 23 days, I lived 2 separate lives. In one, I was the dependable daughter monitoring hotel reservations and responding politely to photographs. In the other, I was quietly removing every piece of leverage they believed they possessed. Task 1. Confirm ownership. I met with Camille Reed, a property attorney who had handled commercial transactions for my company. Her conclusion was unambiguous. The house belonged solely to me. My parents had no lease, no ownership interest, and no proof of financial contributions. Their presence had been permissive, not contractual. "You are allowed to sell your property," she said, "but expect them to turn a legal issue into an emotional spectacle." Task 2. Protect the evidence. I created encrypted copies of the recording, the emails, the deed, the will, tax payments, repair invoices, and household expenses. One copy went to Camille. Another went into a safe deposit box at a bank my parents had never used. Task 3. Separate finances. I closed the travel card after their return flight was confirmed, transferred savings to new accounts, changed every password, removed my mother as an emergency contact, and froze my credit. Task 4. Sell the house. I contacted Nora Patel, a broker known for private sales involving executives who valued discretion. "I want no sign, no public open house, no social media advertising." She studied me for a moment before asking if I was in danger. I told her I was safe, but the occupants were overseas and believed they had rights they did not possess. 2 buyers submitted offers. The strongest came from a medical technology executive relocating from California with his wife. $1.27 million in cash, financing contingency waived, closing in 12 days. Their only condition was vacant possession. Task 5. Remember why. Each night I listened to the recording, not because I enjoyed hurting myself, but because daylight made betrayal easy to minimize. Then I heard my father's voice. "Her weakness is that she still wants us to be proud of her." The doubt would recede. While sorting documents in Grandma Evelyn's desk, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it. She had written the letter several months before her death. She explained that my father had spent years assuming her property would eventually become his. "I am leaving the house to you because you understand that security is built, protected, and respected. They may tell you that keeping what is yours is selfish. Do not believe them. Love that requires you to surrender your future is not love, it is control, wearing a familiar face." I read the letter 3 times. Then I cried for the first time since the phone call. The tears did not change my plan. They completed it. Task 6. Pack the past. I separated everything into 3 categories. Anything I could not prove belonged to me went into my parents' inventory. Their furniture, clothing, framed photographs, kitchen appliances, and decorations filled most of a storage unit. I paid 6 months in advance and photographed every object before sealing the boxes. Grandma's antiques went to a professional auction house, except for her writing desk, a small brass clock, and the chair where she had taught me to read contracts. Those came with me. On the night before closing, they called from Amsterdam. My father complained that the travel card had been declined at an expensive restaurant. He accused me of embarrassing him in front of the staff. "After everything we've done for you, the least you could do is make sure we finish this trip comfortably." I transferred exactly enough for transportation to the airport, and nothing more. Task 7. Stop paying for people who considered my existence a debt. Task 8. Leave before they understood they had lost control. The closing took place on a Thursday morning. I wore a navy suit, carried Grandma Evelyn's letter in my portfolio, and signed every document without hesitation. By 11:15, the house no longer belonged to me. After fees and taxes, more than $1.2 million was transferred into accounts my parents could never access. Part went into long-term investments. The rest gave me something I had never truly possessed before: financial freedom. The movers arrived at noon. One truck carried my belongings to a furnished apartment in Madison, Wisconsin. Another transported my parents' possessions to a climate-controlled storage unit I had prepaid for 6 months. Before leaving, I stood alone in the kitchen. My mother had just sent a photograph from the airport. Coming home with surprises for our favorite girl. I placed a white envelope on the granite counter. On the front, I wrote for family. Inside was one sentence. Surprise. A burden did this. Below it, I included the storage company's information and my attorney's telephone number. 3 days later, my parents returned. The first voicemail arrived at 4:17 p.m. Olivia, something is wrong with the lock. Call me immediately. 20 minutes later, my father's confusion became anger. There are strangers inside our house. Fix this now. My mother initially used her soft voice. Sweetheart, please tell us you're safe. When I did not respond, her messages changed. She accused me of touching their belongings and demanded part of the sale proceeds. The new owner's security cameras recorded my parents trying several doors and arguing through the intercom. My realtor arrived with copies of the legal documents and handed them the envelope. 10 minutes later, my father sent a message. You will regret humiliating us. The next morning, they appeared at my Chicago office, although I was working remotely from Madison. They caused a scene in the lobby, accusing me of stealing their home. Building security removed them. My mother posted in church groups and neighborhood forums, claiming I had abandoned my elderly parents and taken the home they had spent years maintaining. My father contacted several of my clients and described me as dishonest and unstable. One client postponed a contract until my company reviewed the accusations. For the first time since leaving, I felt afraid. My mother created an online donation page titled, Retired Couple Left Homeless by Ungrateful Daughter. She used photographs of Grandma's house and implied they had purchased it. That was when silence stopped protecting me. With Camille's help, I released a short factual statement to the donation platform, my employer, and the community group administrators. It included the deed, the relevant section of Grandma's will, proof that my parents had never paid property taxes, and a short excerpt from the recording. She's a burden, but she's predictable. The donation page disappeared that night. My mother deleted her posts. Several people requested refunds. My father left 14 voicemails demanding I meet him. He threatened to return to my workplace every week. I finally agreed, but the conversation would happen on my terms. I chose a busy coffee shop in downtown Chicago, with cameras and security. Camille waited nearby. I placed my phone in the center of the table before my parents arrived. My father sat down and immediately said, You are going to fix this. I asked what he expected me to fix. Our housing, our reputation, the money you stole, he snapped. The house was ours. It was a family home. No, it was Grandma Evelyn's house, and then it became mine. You lived there because I allowed you to. I pressed play. My father's voice filled the space between us. She has been a burden since the day she was born. Then came my mother's response. Her weakness is that she still wants us to be proud of her. I let the recording continue as they discussed adding their names to the deed, taking the primary bedroom, selling Grandma's antiques, and using public shame to stop me from evicting them. When I stopped the audio, my father attacked the recording, instead of addressing what he had said. You recorded a private conversation. You called me and failed to hang up. I was still on the line. My mother began to cry, but there was still no apology. I placed the printed emails on the table, including the message my father had sent to an attorney about building an ownership claim. Across the bottom, his handwritten words, "Build evidence after Europe." His expression changed. You received nearly $180,000 from Grandma's estate, I said. You spent it. You lived in my house without paying rent for 4 years. I paid for your vacation and prepaid 6 months of storage. You are not without options. You are simply without access to mine. So this was revenge? My mother asked. No. Revenge would mean trying to destroy you. I am refusing to rescue you from the consequences of your own choices. My mother reached across the table, but I moved my hand. I spent my entire life believing that if I worked harder, gave more, and became successful enough, You would finally be proud of me. Then I heard you describe that need as my weakness. I wanted your approval, but I do not anymore. My father called me ungrateful. I stood and picked up my phone. You called me a burden while living in my home, spending my money, and planning to take my future. Now, you are going to learn which one of us was carrying the family. I left before they could answer. The consequences came slowly but heavily. Several attorneys told them they had no ownership claim. When my father continued visiting the sold house, the new owners issued a formal no trespass warning. Members of her church discovered my mother had misrepresented the property and asked her to step down from the finance committee. Friends who had contributed to the donation page demanded refunds. Invitations stopped arriving. My father lost his part-time consulting position after using his company email to accuse me of fraud. Without my financial support, their retirement plan disappeared. They sold the luxury SUV, rented a small apartment outside Aurora, and began selling furniture from the storage unit. Their marriage began falling apart as well. One evening, my mother emailed me an unpaid bill. If something happens to us, you will have to live with your decision. My attorney responded with information about local assistance programs. Weeks later, my father left a quieter voicemail. He admitted that he had always believed Grandma's house should have been his. He admitted that he treated my success as something he was entitled to use. Then he added, "I still think you went too far." That sentence told me he still did not understand. Near the anniversary of the sale, my mother emailed me again. "We only made you feel valuable when you were giving us something. I am sorry." I saved the message but did not reply. An apology could begin change, but it could not instantly restore trust. On the anniversary of the sale, I visited Grandma Evelyn's grave. The house was never meant to keep me there. It was meant to give me the power to leave. My father called me a burden, but the truth was that I had carried my family for years. Selling the house was not revenge. It was the moment I finally stopped abandoning myself. Standards are not punishment. They are protection.